Welcome to Light Over Heat with Professor David Yamani. Let's talk about AR-15 rifles and large capacity magazines. In episode 3 of Light Over Heat, I talked about a 2021 National Firearms Survey fielded by Professor William English of Georgetown University. I said at the time I didn't know much about him, but I've since made a trip to DC and had a chance to sit down with Professor English and learn a little bit about his background, and what I found is pretty interesting. Although he teaches in the business school at Georgetown, his background is in political science, economics, and mathematics, so he approaches issues of guns from a very empirical and quantitative perspective. And the questions he tries to answer are often driven by issues that are currently involved in the courts. So for example, with the Bruen case in the Supreme Court on New York State's concealed carry laws, Professor English has done a study of the relationship between right to carry laws and crime. You can find a link to that SSRN paper in the show notes here. In terms of his National Firearms Survey, Professor English asks for the first time, as far as I'm able to determine, some very interesting questions about ownership of AR-15 style rifles and large capacity magazines. The question of whether these things are commonly owned or commonly used by gun owners is, of course, a very pressing legal issue. English finds that 30.2% of gun owners have owned AR-15 style rifles. That's almost 25 million people using the conservative estimates that we get out of gun ownership surveys. In terms of large or high or standard capacity magazines, English finds that 48% of gun owners have owned magazines that hold 10 or more rounds. That's nearly 40 million people, again, using these conservative estimates. Now, I'm not an attorney. I'm certainly not a Supreme Court justice, so I don't know legally how the issue of common use is defined. But if we look at 1/3 to half of gun owners, I would say that ownership of AR-15 style rifles and high or standard capacity magazines is fairly common empirically. There's much more in the National Firearms Survey that's of interest, including a section on defensive gun use. So go ahead and look in the show notes, find a link to Professor English's report, and let me know in the comments what you think.